Miss Moore. The name sat in the air between us like a stone dropped into still water. And the ring spread out, and I felt every careful thing I had built over 5 years go very quiet inside me. I did not pretend. There was no point. A man does not lay a photograph of your old face on his desk and call you by the name you buried unless he is certain. And Victor Hale was a man who was never anything but certain. To play Sienna Cross now would only have told him I was frightened. And I had decided, somewhere on the long ride up to the 15th floor, that whatever else happened in this room, he would not see me frightened. So I looked at him, and I let Sienna fall away, and for the first time in 5 years, I let another person see Rachel Moore. "How long have you known?" I said. My voice was steady. I was almost surprised by it. Victor Hale studied me with those pale, patient eyes, and something that was almost approval crossed his lined face. "Since your second week," he said. The room seemed to tilt, very slightly. "You hid yourself well," he went on. "Better than I would have thought possible. The hair, the glasses, the voice, the stillness. If I had only had the face to go on, I would never have known." He folded his hands on the desk. "But I do not run a company this size by going on faces. Miss Moore, I go on patterns." And there was a pattern in the way a certain new operations employee moved through this building, the way she learned the floors too quickly, the way she knew which elevator was fastest on her first day, the way she went still before she answered a question, exactly the way a certain young woman used to, a long time ago, 2 desks down from a man named Mark Ellis, whom I notice you have also found again. My blood went cold at Mark's name. "Oh, do not worry," Victor said. Reading my face, "I have not touched him. I have not touched anyone. I have simply watched. I have watched you for weeks. Miss Moore, getting closer and closer to a thing you do not fully understand. And I decided it was time we spoke, before you do something that cannot be undone, by either of us." I made myself sit very still. He had known since my second week, everything I had done since then. The careful approach to Chloe, the conversation with Daniel, the search through the records, the first seam I had found in the logs, all of it. He had watched. The cat I thought I was had been a mouse in a maze the whole time, and the man behind the glass had been the one holding the cheese. And yet, he had not stopped me. He had not had me dismissed, or discredited, or quietly removed the way I had been removed 5 years ago. He had watched, and he had waited. And now he had called me up here to talk, alone. After the floor had emptied, a man who already held every card does not call a meeting. A man calls a meeting when there is something he still needs to find out. That single thought steadied me more than anything else could have. He was not certain of everything. He was certain of who I was. He was not certain of what I had, or who I had told, or how much of the truth had already slipped out of his control. That was why I was sitting in this chair and not standing in a security office. He needed to know how big the leak was before he decided how to plug it, which meant that for the next few minutes, in this quiet, beautiful room, the most dangerous man in my life needed something from me. And I was very, very good at letting people talk. "So you have known for weeks," I said, keeping my voice mild, almost curious. "And here I still am. Why is that? Mr. Hale, what is it you want?" Victor Hale smiled his cold, patient smile, and leaned back in his chair. And I understood that the real conversation was about to begin. "I want to tell you what it is like to sit across from the man who took your life and listen to him explain, calmly, reasonably, why it had been the only sensible thing to do. It is not loud. That is the thing no one tells you. evil. The real kind. The kind that ruins lives from behind a desk. Is not loud at all. It is quiet and reasonable. And it speaks in the voice of a man explaining a difficult but necessary business decision. And the most frightening thing about it is how much sense it almost makes. You were never meant to be harmed. Victor said, I want you to understand that. Because I think you have spent 5 years believing this was personal. And it was not. It was never personal. That was, perhaps, the cruelest part. And I am sorry for it. In the way one is sorry for weather. He turned a pen slowly between his fingers. 5 years ago, he said, you noticed something, a pattern in an account, money moving in ways that did not seem to serve a purpose you could see. You were correct. It did serve a purpose. It served mine. There were arrangements running through this company that needed to remain unseen, arrangements that a great many important people depended upon. And you, a careful and honest junior employee, brushed against the edge of them by simply doing your job a little too well. You sent a question up the chain. He said, a small, polite, entirely reasonable question. Do you remember it? I do. It crossed my desk, and I understood, reading it, that you were the kind of person who would not let a question go unanswered. You would ask again. You would look closer. You would, sooner or later, understand exactly what you had found, and you were not the kind of person who could be persuaded to look away from it. He set the pen down. People who cannot be persuaded to look away are the most dangerous people in the world. Miss Moore, they are also, I have found, the easiest to remove. Precisely because they never see it coming. Honest people never do. So you destroyed me. I said, I removed you. He corrected gently. There is a difference. Though I understand it does not feel like one from where you sit. I needed you gone. And I needed you gone in a way that meant nothing you had ever said or noticed would ever be believed. A woman who leaves under a cloud of theft is not a witness. She is a cautionary tale. Whatever you had seen, whatever you might have said, all of it became the bitter invention of a thief who was caught. He spread his hands. It was efficient. It was complete, and it required only 2 people inside who were ambitious enough and frightened enough to do as they were told. Tessa, I said, and Daniel. They were instruments, he said dismissively. Your friend wanted your position and was jealous enough of you to enjoy taking it. Your fiancé wanted advancement and lacked the spine to refuse me. I gave them what they wanted, and in exchange, they gave me access. And timing, and the small human details that made the trail against you so convincing. They have spent 5 years being rewarded for it, and 5 years being owned by it. Because the proof of what they did to you is also the proof that keeps them obedient to me. He looked at me steadily. That is how it works. Miss Moore, that is how it always works. Everyone in this building who has ever done something for me is also someone I can destroy. It is not loyalty, it is leverage. It is far more reliable. I sat with that for a moment, the sheer cold scale of it. And now, I said, you have me sitting here. You have known for weeks. So this is the part where you make me an offer. Victor Hale almost laughed. You really were wasted in operations. He said, yes, this is the part where I make you an offer. I am going to be very straightforward with you, because I respect you, which is not something I say often. You have come back, and you have found pieces of the truth, and I find I do not wish to repeat the unpleasantness of 5 years ago. It was efficient, but it was not elegant, and I am older now, and I prefer elegant. He named a number. It was a large number, larger than I had made in years of work in my old life. He named it the way another man might offer to buy you lunch. That, he said, and a new identity. A real one this time, built properly, with my resources behind it instead of your amateur efforts. You disappear, comfortably, for good. You never speak of any of this to anyone, and in exchange, you live the rest of your life in more comfort than you have ever known. Instead of, he paused delicately, instead of discovering what happens to a woman who has already been shown. Once, how easily the world can be made to believe she is unwell and unreliable, and not to be listened to. I would so prefer not to do that again, but I have done it before. We both know I have. There it was, the offer and the threat, wrapped together in the same quiet, reasonable voice. I looked at the number. I looked at the man. And I thought about a thin-walled room 1,000 miles away, and 5 years of becoming someone else, and a question I had sent up a chain of command in good faith, and the two people I had loved most in the world being handed to me as instruments. May I think about it? I said. Of course, Victor Hale said, smiling, certain he had won. Take the night. These decisions should not be rushed. I stood up, my legs held. I was proud of that. I gathered my bag, and I turned toward the door. And Victor Hale, who had watched me for weeks, who knew exactly who I was, who held every card he believed mattered, made the single mistake that men like him always make. He believed I had come up to that room with nothing. Mark was in the stairwell when I came down, exactly where he had promised to be, and the look on his face when he saw me walk through the door, alive and whole and unhurried, is something I will not forget. It has been 29 minutes, he said, his voice rough. I was about to do something stupid. I know, I said, I am all right. Walk with me. Not here. We left the building together, two unremarkable employees leaving at the end of a long day, and we did not speak again until we were 3 streets away, in the noise and anonymity of the evening crowd, where no camera watched and no ear could single us out. He knows everything. I said, he has known since my 2nd week. He just offered me a great deal of money and a new life to disappear forever. And he reminded me, very politely, that if I do not take it, he will do to me again exactly what he did 5 years ago. Mark went pale. Then we run. He said, tonight, we take what you have and we go to... We are not running, I said. I stopped walking and I turned to face him. And I told him the thing I had not told him before. The thing I had been holding even from him. Because 5 years alone teaches you to keep your last card hidden even from the people you trust. I did not come up to that room empty. I said, and I did not come back to this city without a plan. For the day someone like Victor Hale finally looked me in the eye, he thinks I have been searching for proof. I have been, but I have not only been searching, I have been building something, the whole time. In case the search led exactly here. Mark waited. The records Victor keeps in his locked room, I said, are his insurance? The proof of what he did. He believes that as long as those records exist only where he can reach them, he is safe. Because anything I claim, I cannot prove. And a woman with no proof who once left under a cloud of theft is exactly the cautionary tale he made me into. That is the whole foundation he is standing on, that nothing provable exists outside his control. I leaned closer. But something does. I said, you found it for me. You just did not know what it was. The audit, Mark said slowly. The audit, I said, a year after I left. An external auditor had come close to the same thing I had brushed against. Victor had buried it, purged the internal records, and quietly dismissed the auditor to make sure the man never spoke. Mark had told me this weeks ago, as a piece of suspicious history, but Mark had also, at my asking, done one more thing. He had found the auditor. His name was Gerald Okafor, and he had not gone quietly. Not really. He had gone silent, which is a different thing. A careful man. An honest man. Dismissed without good reason after finding numbers that did not add up. Does not simply forget. He keeps his own copy. He keeps it because he is frightened, and because some part of him believes that one day someone will come asking, and he wants, when that day comes, to be able to prove he was not the one who did wrong. Mark had found him 3 weeks ago. I had spent those 3 weeks, in the evenings, away from the building, very carefully earning the trust of a frightened man who had been carrying his own version of my 5 years. He has it, I said, the original audit findings, his own retained copy, dated, complete, outside Victor's reach, kept all this time, real, independent. Third-party proof that the money running through this company was exactly what I suspected 5 years ago. Proof that does not depend on me, or on my word, or on anything Victor can dismiss as the bitterness of a discredited thief. Mark stared at me. Then, he said, "Then you do not need the locked room at all." "No," I said, "I never did. The locked room was always a trap. The moment I broke into it, I would have become exactly the criminal Victor needs me to be. I do not need his proof. I have my own. The locked room only matters now for one reason. It tells me that Victor still believes his secret is safe, because he is still guarding it. He does not know that Gerald Okafor kept a copy. He thinks he buried that thread 5 years ago. He is sitting up there tonight, certain he has offered me a choice between his money and his mercy, and he has no idea that the choice was never mine to make. It was already made, 3 weeks ago, in a quiet kitchen across town, by a frightened accountant who decided he was finished being afraid. The evening crowd moved around us, ordinary and loud and alive. "So what do?" Mark said. "We do this properly," I said. "We do not run, and we do not break in, and we do not throw accusations into the air the way I had no choice but to do 5 years ago. We take Gerald's findings, and we take everything I have gathered, and we bring in the one thing Victor Hale has spent his whole career making sure he never has to face. People he does not own. The kind of authorities and oversight that a man like him cannot lean on, cannot frighten, cannot make believe a woman is unwell. We bring the truth to the only rooms in this city that do not belong to Victor Hale. And then," I said, "we give one more person a chance to choose the right side before it is too late for him." "Daniel," Mark said. "Daniel," I said. "He is already cracking. I heard it. A man like that, when the ground starts to move, will want to be standing somewhere he can survive. I am going to give him the chance to be a witness instead of a defendant. He took my life with a signature. He can help give it back with one." I went to Daniel the next day, and this time I did not go as Sienna Cross. I went to him in his office, late again, after the floor had thinned, and I closed the door behind me, and I took off the glasses I did not need, and I stood in front of the man I had once been going to marry, and I let him look at me until he understood. I watched it happen. I watched his charming, distracted, handsome face go slack, then white, then sick, as the woman in front of him resolved, feature by feature, into someone he had spent 5 years trying very hard not to think about. "Rachel," he whispered. "Hello, Daniel," I said. He sat down hard in his chair, as if his legs had stopped working. For a moment, I thought he might be sick. He put a hand over his mouth and stared at me with eyes that were already wet. And I felt, looking at him, not the rage I had expected, not even hatred, but a kind of weary recognition. He was not a monster. Victor Hale was a monster. Daniel was just a weak man who had done a monstrous thing because a monster asked him to, and who had been rotting quietly inside it ever since. "It is you," he said. "It is really you," I thought. "We thought. I told you the other night, in this office. I told a stranger. You told me." I said, "You said you got carried into something. You said it was supposed to be smaller than it was. You said the man asking was not a man you could say no to. I heard all of it. Daniel, I was the stranger. I have been the stranger for weeks." He made a sound that was almost a sob. "I am not here to make you feel better," I said, "and I am not here to make you feel worse. Though I could, and a part of me wants to. I am here because in about a day, this is all going to come apart. And when it does, you are going to be standing somewhere. The only choice you have left is where." I sat down across from him, the way he had sat across from a doctor 5 years ago and signed a paper that ended my life. "Here is what is going to happen," I said. "The truth about what runs through this company is going to reach people Victor Hale does not own. Real proof, independent proof. Not my word against his. Not the bitterness of a discredited woman. Real, dated, third-party proof that he cannot bury and cannot explain. When it lands, everything he built comes down, and everyone who helped him is going to be sorted, very quickly, into 2 groups: the ones who helped the truth come out, and the ones who tried to hold it back to the end." Daniel was shaking. "You signed a paper that destroyed me," I said. "You can sign your name to the truth instead. You can tell what you know, about what was asked of you, and by whom, and why. You can stand up, for the first time in your life, and be the witness instead of the accomplice. It will not undo what you did. Nothing will. But it is the difference between a man who did a terrible thing and then helped make it right, and a man who did a terrible thing and clung to it until it dragged him under." He paused. "Those 2 men have very different futures. Daniel, I am giving you the chance to choose which one you are. Victor never gave me a choice. I am giving you one. That is the only mercy in this, and it is more than you gave me." He was crying openly now. This man I had once loved, this weak and ruined man. "I have wanted to," he said, "for 5 years. I have wanted to. I did not know how. I did not know if anyone would." "Someone is," I said. "Now. Today. Will you—" Daniel Pierce looked at me, the woman he had helped to bury, sitting alive and calm in his office, holding out the only rope he had been offered in 5 years. And the weak man did, at last. The one brave thing of his life. "Yes," he said. "Tell me what you need. Yes." Tessa was different, and I had always known she would be. She found me before I had to find her. That was Tessa. She had felt the ghost in the elevator. She had pulled the old photograph. She had been comparing faces for weeks, and somewhere in the last day, with Daniel suddenly absent from meetings and a strange new tension running through the executive floor. The sharpest person in the building had put it together. She came to the 11th floor herself, which she never did, and she found me at my desk, and she stood in front of it and looked at me for a long moment. And then she said, quietly, so the others would not hear, "My office. Now." I followed her up. I was not afraid. I had stopped being afraid somewhere in Victor Hale's office, when I understood that the worst thing that could happen to me had already happened 5 years ago, and I had survived it, and come back. She closed her office door and turned to face me, and for the first time in 5 years, my best friend of 10 years looked directly at me and saw me. "It is you," she said. "It is actually you. Rachel. Yes, I said. She did not cry. Of course she did not. Tessa had never been a woman who cried unless it was useful. She looked at me with a face that was working through calculations. Fast. The way her face had always worked. And I watched her run. In the space of a few seconds, through fury and fear and disbelief, and land. Exactly where I had known she would land. On strategy. How much do you have? She said. Not. I am sorry. Not. How could you come back? Not even. How did you survive? How much do you have? Even now. Even cornered. Tessa was only ever asking one question, which was, how do I come out of this alive? Enough. I said, enough to end him. Enough to end all of it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said something that told me everything about who Tessa Lang had always been, underneath the 10 years of friendship I had believed in. Then we should talk about how I help you, she said. I almost admired it. I want to be honest about that. There was no remorse in her. There was no apology. There was not even an attempt to pretend at one. She had betrayed me, taken my position, married my fiancé, helped a powerful man erase me. And the instant she understood that the wind had changed, she pivoted, smooth as water, to offering me her help against the man she had served, because that was the move that kept Tessa alive. She would turn on Victor as easily as she had turned on me. Loyalty had never been the thing that moved her. Survival was. You want to flip? I said. I want to be useful to the winning side, she said, which is the same thing. And at least I am honest about it. I know things. Rachel, I know more than Daniel. I know where things are kept. I know who else is involved. I can give you a great deal. And in exchange you want to walk away clean. I said, the way you walked away clean 5 years ago, while I lost everything. She did not even flinch. I want to survive. She said simply, I have always wanted to survive. You used to find that admirable, before it was pointed at you. And there it was, the whole of our friendship. Finally seen clearly, she had not become a monster when she betrayed me. She had always been exactly this. I had simply been standing on the right side of her survival for 10 years and had mistaken it for love. I looked at the woman I had once told everything to, and I felt the strangest thing settle over me. Not rage, not grief, closure, because I had come back, somewhere deep down, still wanting one impossible thing. I had wanted Tessa to be sorry. I had wanted, when this moment came, for there to be some flicker of the friend I remembered. Some sign that the 10 years had been real, that she had carried even a little guilt. I had wanted her remorse the way you want a wound to finally close. And standing in her office, watching her coldly offer to betray her next master to save herself, I understood that her remorse was never coming, because it had never existed, and that I did not need it. That was the gift. I did not need Tessa Lang to be sorry. I did not need her to have ever loved me. I could see her, completely, at last, and let her go. I will tell you what I am going to do. I said, the truth is coming out, all of it, through people Victor cannot touch. You are not going to walk away clean. Those days are over for everyone in this building, including you. But what you do between now and then is still your choice. Cooperate, fully and honestly, with the people who are about to come asking, and it will be remembered that you did, or do not, and it will be remembered that you did not. That is the only offer. Tessa. It is the same offer I gave Daniel. It is more than you ever gave me. I walked to the door. You really think you can bring him down? She said behind me. Victor Hale. You really think you, of all people, can...
I have already done it, I said, without turning around. You just have not heard the sound yet. And I left her there, in the office that had once been going to be mine, in a life I no longer wanted any part of. And I did not look back, because there was nothing behind me anymore that I needed.
I am not going to pretend the end was a single dramatic moment, because that is not how the truth actually works. The truth does not come down like lightning. It comes down like water, slowly at first, and then all at once, finding every crack. It took 3 weeks. Gerald Okafor, the auditor who had been carrying his own fear for 5 years, brought his retained copy of the original findings to the people who needed to see it. Not to a newspaper, not to a public stage, but to the right authorities, the regulators and investigators whose entire purpose is to look into exactly the kind of arrangements Victor Hale had spent his career hiding. Independent, documented, dated, impossible to dismiss as the bitterness of a discredited woman. Because it did not come from me at all. It came from a careful, honest accountant who had simply written down what he found. My own gathered pieces went alongside it, the logs I had found, showing my login used from a floor I never worked on, the pattern I had remembered and could now describe in full, the timeline that connected the question I had asked 5 years ago to the destruction that followed weeks later. And then there were the witnesses. Daniel kept his word. He told them everything, what had been asked of him, and by whom, and why, and how. He named Victor Hale. He described the conversation, 5 years ago, in which moving someone aside had been explained to him as a small thing. For the good of the company, he did not spare himself. There was, in the end, a kind of broken dignity in how completely he confessed, as if 5 years of rot were finally draining out of a wound he had never let close. Tessa cooperated too, in her way, which is to say she cooperated exactly as much as was useful to Tessa, and not one word more, calculating to the last. But what she gave was real, and it mattered, and it added to the weight. And the weight, in the end, was crushing. Victor Hale was a powerful man. Powerful men do not fall quietly. And he did not. He fought. He brought lawyers. He leaned on the people he owned, and found, for the first time in his career, that the rooms the truth had been brought into were rooms he did not own, full of people he could not frighten and could not buy and could not convince that a careful accountant and a documented paper trail were the inventions of an unstable woman, the leverage that had made him untouchable for so long, the proof of everyone's complicity that he had held over everyone's head. Turned out to cut both ways. Once the truth was loose, every person he had ever owned had a reason to stop protecting him and start protecting themselves. His empire did not survive it. The arrangements that had run through the company for years were dragged into the light, examined, and unmade. The company itself was placed under new oversight. The name, Hale and Pierce. The name he had stitched together out of his own, and the name of a man he had owned, came down off the building. And the case against Rachel Moore, the quiet theft that had ended my life 5 years ago, the cautionary tale, was reopened, examined with everything that was now known, and formally, completely, publicly undone. The trail that had pointed at me was shown for what it always had been. A construction, a lie, built by careful hands, to bury an honest woman who had seen too much. My name was cleared. I want to tell you that it felt like fireworks. It did not. I had imagined this moment for 5 years, and the imagining had always had a kind of triumph in it, a vindication, a crowd, a sense of the whole watching world finally understanding. The reality was quieter. and stranger, and in some ways, harder. It felt like setting down a weight so heavy and so old that I had forgotten my body had ever stood up straight. It felt like the absence of something, not the arrival of it. The thing I had carried for 5 years, the lie, the shame, the cold, patient need to undo it, simply was not there anymore. And in the space where it had been, there was only me, whoever that was now. There was one more moment I will tell you about, because it was the only part that felt the way I had imagined. I saw Victor Hale one last time, across a crowded formal room. On the day, everything became undeniable. He was diminished, not destroyed in any loud way, just smaller. The certainty gone out of him. The locked room of his power finally opened and emptied for everyone to see. He looked across that room, and he found me. And for a moment, the man who had taken my life and the woman who had come back to take it apart simply looked at each other. He did not look angry. He looked, if anything, faintly puzzled, the way a man looks at a single small thing that turned out to be the undoing of everything. A question he never bothered to answer properly. Sent up a chain of command by a careful junior employee 5 years ago that he had thought he had buried, and that had, in the end, climbed all the way back up to him. I did not smile at him. I did not need to. I simply held his gaze until he was the one who looked away. Then I turned, and I walked out of that room, and out of his world, for good. People ask me, sometimes, the ones who know the whole story, whether I went back to my old life, to the work I had been good at, the career that had been stolen, the place at the table I had been about to be given before a powerful man decided I had seen too much. I did not. I could have, after it was over, after my name was cleared. Doors that had been shut for 5 years swung open again. There were offers. There were people. Suddenly, who had always believed in me, who had always known, who were so terribly sorry. There was a version of the ending where Rachel Moore walked back into the industry that had abandoned her and took the corner office and the title and the vindication of being, at last, exactly where she would have been if none of it had ever happened. I did not want it. That surprised people. It surprised me. A little, until I sat with it long enough to understand. The woman who had wanted that life, the bright, warm, trusting young woman with the corner of an open office and a spring wedding, and a best friend she told everything to. That woman was gone. She had been gone for a long time. I did not mourn her the way I once thought I would. She had been lovely, and she had been mine. And she had also been a person who did not yet know what the world was. And I could not become her again any more than a tree can become a seed. And I did not want to spend the rest of my life standing in the place where I had been broken. Even as the person who had survived the breaking, that place belonged to the lie now. No matter how thoroughly the lie had been undone, I did not want to win the old life. I wanted a new one that was mine from the foundation up, built by the person I had actually become, and not handed back to me as compensation for the one that had been taken. So I built one. It is small. By the standards of the world, I left. I started my own firm, a quiet, careful, honest thing, the kind of work I had always been good at, done now entirely on my own terms, for people who needed someone careful and honest in their corner. Mark came with me. Of course he did. After 5 years of being the one good man in a building full of compromise, he was glad, I think, to finally work somewhere he did not have to keep a secret. We are partners now, in the plain and solid way of two people who trusted each other when it cost everything to do so. Not a romance, something steadier than that, and rarer, a friendship that was tested in the only way friendships are ever really tested, and held. I found Chloe a place with us too. The young assistant who had been kind to a stranger, who had given me the shape of a floor she did not know was a battlefield, who had trusted me when I was using her trust. I had promised myself I would protect her, and I did. She never knew, in the worst of it, how close she had come to the center of something dangerous. I made sure of that. She knows now, all of it, and she knows what she unknowingly did. And the strange thing is that she is proud of it. And I have let her be, because she deserves to be. She is brilliant, and she is becoming more brilliant, and she will go far, and she will go far having been seen, properly, by someone, from the beginning. That is the one thing I could give her that no one gave me. I gave it gladly. As for the others, Daniel I do not see, but I do not wish him ill. He did the one brave thing of his life when it counted, and it cost him. And he is somewhere now living a quieter and smaller and more honest existence than the one he clung to for so long. And I hope, in a distant way, that he has found some peace in finally having told the truth. We will never be anything to each other again, but I am not haunted by him. And that is its own kind of freedom. Tessa, I do not think about it all, which is the truest victory of the three. For 5 years she had a place in my mind. A wound I kept pressing, a friendship I kept mourning. And then I saw her clearly. One afternoon, in an office that was almost mine, and I understood that there had never been anything there to mourn. And the wound simply closed. I do not hate her. You cannot hate a thing once you have finally seen exactly what it is. I just no longer carry her. She is a person I used to know, who turned out to be someone I never knew at all. And the space she took up in me for 5 years is mine again now, and I have filled it with better things. And Victor Hale is where men like Victor Hale end up. When the rooms they cannot own finally open the doors they spent a lifetime keeping shut. I think, sometimes, about the woman in the mirror, the one I built over 5 careful years, Sienna Cross, with her dark hair and her glasses she did not need, and her flat, watchful calm. I was so sure, when I created her, that she was a disguise, a weapon, a temporary self I would put on to do a terrible necessary thing, and take off again when it was done. But you cannot wear a self for 5 years and have none of it be real. Sienna's patience is mine now. Sienna's stillness, her watchfulness, her refusal to be rushed or frightened or seen before she chooses to be seen. All of it is mine. And Rachel is mine too. The warmth I thought the world had burned out of me. The part of me that gave Chloe what no one gave me. The part that could look at Daniel and feel weary mercy instead of only rage. I am not Rachel Moore, the trusting girl who was destroyed. I am not Sienna Cross, the cold stranger who came back to destroy. I am the woman both of them became, together, and she is someone neither of them could have been alone. I did not come back for revenge. I understand that now, looking at the life I have built out of the wreckage of the one that was taken. Revenge was the road, but it was never the destination. I came back for the truth, and the truth, it turned out, was not only about what Victor Hale had done, it was about who I was. Underneath everything that had been done to me, a careful woman, an honest one, the kind who cannot be persuaded to look away from a thing that is wrong. No matter how much it costs her, the very thing that made me dangerous 5 years ago is the thing that brought me home. They tried to make me a cautionary tale. In the end, I got to choose what kind of tale I was instead. And I chose this one. Thank you for listening to The Woman Who Came Back. If this story stayed with you, leave a comment and let me know which part moved you most. And subscribe for the next story. I read every comment, and I will see you in the next one.